The spiritual history of Ireland is the source of numerous stories, including those about the little people, pixies, fairies, leprechauns, banshees, and a great number of other supernatural beings. The black dog, on the other hand, was the one who was certain to instill a sense of dread in the hearts of all those who came into contact with him. When it came to identifying who he was or where he originated, there were at least two distinct theories. One of the reasons was that he was a spirit from the world of the spirit, and he had been sent to expel mortals from a region that the spirit considered to be holy and where mortal feet should not tread. Or that he may be sent back by a homeowner who had passed away and wanted the people who were now occupying his properties to leave. His eyes were reported to be bright or red and flaming, and he was described as being enormous and wolf-like. It is possible that a person who is unlucky enough to wake up would discover that he is standing over them while they are sleeping, growling and snarling as his saliva is flowing down on them, as if he were trying his first taste of their flesh. According to some reports, the unfortunate victim would find himself confronted by this monster when he was walking home on a dark night. The creature would be crouched in a posture that gave the impression that it was prepared to strike. It would never take his eyes off of the victim, and his lips would be curled back to reveal his big canine fangs as a warning. It was also said that he was the protector of the fairy fort, according to another story, and obstructed our way when we, the mortals, tried to go too near to the area where the small people were engaged in their activities. It was possible to hear him glimmering through the bushes on a solitary rural path in the dark as one was making their way home. The only sounds that can be heard are his low breathing and snarl, as well as the sound of twigs breaking beneath his wolf-like feet. If you stayed on your current course, he would not do you any damage. But if you were to go in the direction of the fairy fort, you would find yourself confronted by this monstrous dog in all of his ferociousness. When everything was said and done, the only authority he had was the ability to instill dread in his unfortunate victim. Being from another dimension, his abilities in this one were very restricted. He would not be able to do you any damage if you were courageous enough to continue going. On the other hand, if you made the decision to flee, it was also believed that he would have the ability to consume you, and you would no longer be visible.
Ireland's most populous and important cities is Dublin. A Gaelic colony appeared in the region in the 700s, and in 841, the Vikings founded a new town they called Deflin. It sounds and looks like Dublin, doesn't it? Who first used the name Dublin, as opposed to the older Irish term Duiblin, meaning Black Pool in English, is a matter of some dispute. That Dublin was the major settlement of Ireland by the 12th century. Several decades later, at the turn of the 20th century, Dublin was named Capital. Where today's St. Michan's church sits was once a chapel constructed by Vikings who settled the region. The ancient Viking foundation was preserved for the construction of a Christian church in 1095. Its use has varied over the years, from a Christian chapel to a Catholic church and even a Norse chapel. The building has had various modifications and has changed ownership several times. Preservation and expansion of the crypt occurred somewhere in the 17th century after its construction. The exact date of construction is still a matter of contention, with some accounts putting it even further back in time. Some claim to have felt the touch of a spectral hand, and tales of the dead conversing in the subterranean tunnels stretch back centuries. Older coffins buried underneath later cracked open from the weight of more recent ones, but for a long time, people only thought of the crypts as a series of vaults housing coffins. In the ones that exploded, the preserved bodies within showed signs of mummification that had not been subjected to any kind of artificial preservation. Possible culprits for the mummification include the limestone walls of the crypt and the methane gas in the wetland under the building's base. The temperature seldom changes, and the air is dry. Nothing spoils in the crypt because of the damp, dark climate. Everything just dries up. The flesh on their bodies has long since become leathery. Some of their desiccated organs are visible, and some still have fingernails on. Since none of the more recent coffins have shattered, the locals are working from the assumption that all of the coffins hold preserved mummies. Because it is against the law to open a sealed coffin, no one knows if the more recent ones contain mummies. The Crusader is the name of one of the mummies. He is a tall guy whose broken legs are crossed, a feature presumably added after death when the corpse was too tall to fit in his coffin. Aside from the Crusader, there are two more mummies: the thief, who is missing a hand, and the nun, who is a little woman's skeleton. A bomb detonated in adjacent forecourts in 1922 during the Irish Civil War damaged the records of St. Michan's, which may have chronicled each crypt resident. Regrettably, the data were lost in a fire. John and Henry Shears, for example, were brothers who were beheaded after being drawn and quartered and hung. Claims of disembodied voices in the crypts have not been linked to any one individual. However, there seems to have been a significant increase in these accounts between 1996 and 2019, when vandalism occurred. Adolescents stole coffins in 1996 and removed corpses, including a child's. The teens were apprehended by the police, and the remains were returned to their original condition to the best of our ability. According to reports, in 2019, an individual by the name of Brian Bridgman reportedly gained access to the tomb, severed the head of the Crusader mummy, and made off with its head and another skull. Other artifacts were allegedly also severely damaged. Officials reconnected the skull with the corpse after 4.5 months of searching for the vandal. I couldn't discover any details on how the cops identified the perpetrator, but it is absolutely top-notch police work. Based on my study, it seems that St. Michan's crypts were formerly accessible to walking alone, but today you can only enter during specified hours, and you're required to have a guide. If that's the case, then it's understandable that people can't bring themselves to let the deceased rest in peace. Other videos we have prepared in the description. Without a doubt, the most recognizable feature in the vicinity is the Hellfire Club, which can be seen clearly against the backdrop of the Dublin Mountains. The location, which is 1,275 feet above sea level and close to Mount Pellier's peak, was once a passage tomb. Built inside a cairn, a circle of big boulders, the tomb dates back to the Neolithic period, 4,500, 2000 BC. Located on Mount Pellier Hill, Speaker Connolly constructed the mansion around 1725. With a mansion on Capel Street in Dublin and a rural estate at Castletown, close to Selbridge, Connolly was among the richest Irishmen. Originally intended as a hunting lodge, he built the club. While constructing the hunting lodge, Connolly allegedly used the boulders to smash the cairn. A big storm subsequently blew off the roof, which had been slated initially. The locals believed that the devil was responsible for this disaster as retribution for the cairn's destruction. The locals began to associate the resort with evil after this incident, but a stone-arched roof took the place of the slated one, and Connolly installed it. On the top level, there was a hall and 2 sizable rooms. Above the living room and hallway was a little loft. Up a flight of stairs was the hall door. A huge kitchen, servants' quarters, and many smaller rooms made up the lower floor. With its north-facing orientation, every window offered a breathtaking panorama of Dublin. For many years after Connolly's death in 1729, the hunting lodge was deserted until it was bought by the notorious Hellfire Club, from whom it derived its name. Hellfire clubs, which originated in the 17th and 18th centuries, were known for their heinous and immoral activities. In 1735, The Hellfire Club was founded in Dublin by Richard Parsons, the first Earl of Ross. The King of Hell was the moniker of the Hellfire Club's president, who rode about in a satanic costume complete with wings, cloven hooves, and horns. It was formerly customary to give the first toast to the devil, who was worshipped by some as a saint, by leaving the vice chair vacant. Overindulgence in alcohol became synonymous with the clubs. At Hellfire Club gatherings, members would chow down on Schooltheen, a concoction of whiskey and butter. In his memoirs, Malachi Horan recalls the days at the Jobstown Inn when Schooltheen was a staple menu item. In another anecdote involving the group, a young farmer from Boherna Brina, who wanted to know more about the gatherings, walked up Mount Pellier one night. The club members tracked him down, brought him inside the building, and let him see the night's events. The next morning, he was discovered aimlessly roaming the region. According to legend, he remained mute and unable to utter a word for the remainder of his life. A black cat was the subject of one of the additional club legends. A young man who had come to see a nearby farmhouse felt compelled to check out the Hellfire Club. The body of the man was discovered the next day, face down in a creek in the mountains. He summoned a priest to join him to the Hellfire Club, since his host thought the youngster had been killed. As they arrived at the club, nightfall was approaching. They pounded on the door, and a towering figure in a dark cloak answered. They were dragged into the dining room as soon as they stepped foot in the home. The two guys were coerced into sitting down as the feast was about to start. A sultry black cat sauntered into the room and assumed the position of head of the table. The priest saw that the feline's ears were drooping like horns on each side of its intimidating-looking skull rather than standing upright. With a rise to his feet, the pastor intended to depart from the demonic assemblage as his broad, deep eyes blazed wrath in his direction. Someone grabbed him and shoved him back into his seat. Then, with all his might, he hurled the little bottle of holy water he had in his pocket at the cat, all the while reciting the exorcism prayer. Amidst the mayhem, the farmer's horrified cries pierced the air. After inhaling too much smoke and sulfur, the priest had to leave the home, but he didn't stop praying. When he went outside, he saw the farmer sprawled on the ground, severely clawed all over. There was no full recovery for the unfortunate individual. Once upon a time, there was a Hellfire Club that burnt down. The following morning, according to folklore, it still existed as a ruin on top of the hill. As Hook Head is a headland that can be found in County Wexford, Ireland. It is situated on the eastern side of the estuary of the Three Sisters Rivers, which are the Nore, the Suir, and the Barrow. In addition to being near to the ancient townland of Loftus Hall, it is a component of the Hook Peninsula. Located on the R734, it is 50 kilometers away from the town of Wexford. The expression by hook or by crook is credited as being the one that introduced the term hook head into the common English language. Oliver Cromwell made a promise to seize Waterford by Hook, which is located on the Wexford side of the estuary, or by Crook, which is a settlement located on the Waterford side of the estuary. This term is derived from that original promise. This enormous mansion home is known as Loftus Hall, and it can be seen on the Hook Peninsula. When you are driving towards Hook Lighthouse, which is situated on the point of the Hook Peninsula, you will find it on the right-hand side of the road. In 1170, the Norman knight Raymond le Gros, who had adopted an Irish identity by changing his surname to Redmond, constructed the first fortress on the site. He did this in order to conform to the Irish culture. In the year 1666, Henry Loftus, the son of Nicholas Loftus, moved into the hall, and it was at that time that it became the primary house of the Loftus family. During the period of the Black Death, in the year 1350, the Redmond family constructed the hall in order to take the place of the castle. After that, it was given the name Redmond Hall and remained in the possession of the Redmond family until the 1650s, when it was transferred to the Loftus family, who were English planters, as part of the Cromwellian invasion. In preparation for a visit by Her Majesty Queen Victoria, the edifice that is still standing today had extensive renovations between the years 1872 and 1879. These renovations were carried out by John Wellington Graham Loftus, the 4th Marquess of Ely. His mother, Lady Jane Loftus, who was also known as the Marchioness of Ely, served as Queen Victoria's Lady of the Bedchamber from the years 1851 to 1889. Lady Jane Loftus spent a significant amount of time with Queen Victoria at Osborne House, which served as a source of inspiration for the improvements that were carried out at Loftus Hall. Unfortunately, the Queen's visit did not take place, and as a result of all of the works, the Loftus family was left with a significant amount of debt. After he passed away without any problems in the year 1889, and his mother passed away the following year, the estate of the bankrupt individual was placed up for auction. In 1917, the Benedictine Order of Nuns purchased Loftus Hall, and they lived there for a total of 18 years until moving again. After then, the Sisters of Providence took control of it and operated it as a school for young women who were interested in entering the order until the early 1980s. Following its acquisition by Michael Devereux in 1983, the establishment was reopened under the name Loftus Hall Hotel. However, it was eventually shut down once again in the early 1990s. The remaining members of Devereux's family had private ownership of the property until late 2011, when it was sold to the Quigley family from Bannow, who are the present proprietors of the property. Considering that the hall was in a condition of disrepair when it was bought, the Quigley family has made a significant investment to the project. They have secured the building and are making significant progress at regenerating the walled gardens, the courtyard, and the house in order to guarantee that Loftus Hall will continue to exist for many years to come. In the midst of the desolate countryside, Loftus Hall stands alone and austere. This backdrop contributes to the eerie narrative that it tells. Because it has been reported for a considerable amount of time that the devil has visited the location, a great number of individuals from the local region are hesitant to access the location after dark. After his ship was forced into nearby Slade Harbor by heavy waves, a mysterious individual on horseback entered the hall during a storm at sea. According to the legend, the storm was caused by rough seas. He was given the opportunity to take refuge in the hall, where he stayed for a few days with the Tottenham family, who were residing there at the same time. For some reason, the young lady Anne Tottenham was particularly captivated by this mysterious individual, and she fell head over heels in love with him. In the course of a card game that she was playing one evening, she accidentally lost a card, and when she bent down to grab it, she observed that the dark stranger had cloven hooves instead of boots. As soon as he became aware of what she had seen, he entered the building in a ball of flame and blasted through the roof. She plunged into a state of shock and craziness, and her family confined her in the tapestry room out of fear that anybody would see her. Anne never recovered from her condition. Even though she passed away a few years later, she was still relatively young at the time of her death. However, her passing was not a relief, since family members and maids reported seeing her walking about the home at night. The family requested that the local Catholic priest, Factor Broaders, exorcise the hall, but he was unable to exorcise the chamber that contained the tapestry. Many people have said that there is something about certain places of the hall, its atmosphere, the temperature, and the overall sensation of discomfort. This tale has been recounted throughout the years, and many people have indicated that there is something about it. From the time when Loftus Hall was reopened to the public in 2012 for house tours, many have said that they have experienced and seen phenomena inside the hall that have left them with questions.
Countries have as a rich history as Ireland. Ancient remains dot our gorgeous terrain from coast to coast, reminding us of the past. Our unique legacy is mystically enhanced by folklore and local mythology in every town, city, and hamlet. There are castles, stately homes, destroyed city walls, and more modern reminders of our agricultural or industrial history in every county. We are lucky to be surrounded by these direct ties to our forebears. Few cities and counties have kept their historical pulse like Kilkenny in a technology era. Modern life blends with medieval life at the Marble City. Many Irish cities, towns, and counties are gorgeous, but Kilkenny is really atmospheric. Kilkenny Castle's frightening beauty overlooks narrow cobblestone streets, city walls, St. Canice's Cathedral, and its beautiful tower. Kilkenny is full with ghostly stories due to its magical appeal. People have passed down tales for decades, making them more than hearsay. Kilkenny's ghost stories share one crucial characteristic. They are all based on real historical catastrophes. This is true even for lesser-known stories like John's Bridge. The bridge, one of Kilkenny's two principal ones, dates to 1910. John's Bridge has been renovated multiple times since 1200. The 1763 flood brought thousands to Green's to see it fall. While they watched events upriver, John's Bridge crumbled, sending everyone on it into the dark, swelling Nore. 16 died. Today, residents and tourists report ghostly forms leaning on the new structure's walls and looking toward Green's Bridge. Today, people take photos and admire the castle as they cross the bridge. Most people are unaware that they stand on the scene of such tragedy, yet the bridge has history. An ominous river mist in the morning. Kilkenny Castle has existed on the location since 1195, so it's hardly unexpected that legends and sightings persist. The castle has been visited for centuries and still is. A parade tower electronic counter, meant to tally visits to the 13th century component of the castle, continues to register up to 100 people at night when the tower is shut. Staff on the bottom floor, once a dungeon where many a poor person died, are still puzzled by the cutting-edge equipment. The castle tour begins at the site of the Dame Alice Keitler witch trial. Locals say the castle's White Lady roams the grounds and riverbanks. She wanders the halls and stairs and may have been accidentally captured by two young tourists in 2010. Kilkenny residents think this ghost is Lady Margaret Butler, born in the castle in 1454 or 1465. Through her oldest son Thomas, she was the paternal grandmother of Anne Boleyn, second wife of King Henry VIII. Her ghost reportedly returned to Kilkenny after death. Legends of ghost monks and merchants stalk Kilkenny streets and pubs. Few are as thoroughly recorded and engaging as Dame Alice Keitler's. Noblewoman. Dame Alice was born in Keitler's house around 1280 into a prominent family. She married 4 times. After her first 3 husbands died mysteriously, her 4th husband, John Lepoer, became unwell and aroused suspicions of poisoning. The 4 children from his former marriage and the offspring of her 3 prior marriages accused Dame Alice of poisoning and sorcery after his death. Blasphemy, renouncing religion, and sacrificing animals to devils were also charged. Kilkenny Castle hosted her 1324 trial before Bishop Richard de Ledred of Ossory. After months of impasse, her servant Petronella confessed to witchcraft against Dame Alice after torture. She's condemned. Dame Alice Keitler and Petronella's daughter may have escaped to the UK. Nothing is known about her after 1324. Petronella was unlucky. A scapegoat for the witch hunt, she was flogged and burnt at the stake on November 3, 1324, becoming the first Irish heretic to be burned at the fire. Petronella swore retribution as she awaited her destiny in front of the baying audience. Ironically, the fast food business where she died burnt down in December 2009. The first witch trial ever documented. In central Kilkenny, Keitler's House is a famous tavern and restaurant. A menacing female ghost sometimes appears to visitors. The spirit of Petronella or Dame Alice is debated locally. According to legend, Keitler's ghost walks the steps beneath the western window of St. Canice's Cathedral. A feeling of Dame Alice permeates Kilkenny's cosmopolitan passageways and side streets, yet the city's mystery extends beyond its medieval walls. History abounds across the county. The ruins of industrial structures that once energized laborers who worked day and night in perilous conditions bring an industrial past to life. Deer Park Coal Mine in Castlecomer is gloomy and evocative, nestled in the woods. Since 1928, the Deer Park Colliery, formerly Ireland's mining hub, has housed 600 men and boys. Many structures or foundations remain. Since 1969, the bathhouse, bicycle shed, and explosives magazine have been abandoned under Bell's Heap's shadow. Leap Castle's ghosts find residence in the Bloody Chapel. Those walking the castle late at night have claimed strong light pouring out of the top windows. Reports of this event date back to the Darbys. Passers-by also noticed similar occurrence when the castle was left a burnt-through shell after the 1922 blaze. Neighbors have contacted the Ryans and told them of the chapel's lighting even now. People visiting the top hall have also observed unusual rubber scents. One of the most well-known is called the O'Carroll priest. A bloody power struggle among the surviving O'Carroll family emerged after Mulrooney O'Carroll's death in 1532. Brother battled against another to become chieftain. According to an O'Carroll killed his brother, a priest, during a service in the castle's top hall. Considered a huge affront, it is said that the priest began the mass before his brother arrived. Then the enraged O'Carroll got into a frenzy and killed his brother where he was standing. The priest has been spotted in the Bloody Chapel quite a bit. This entity has also been spotted prowling the stairwell below and departing the chapel by the western entrance to the bartizan and down the northern steps. The oubliette in the Bloody Chapel has some additional terrible aspects. In the northeastern corner of the Bloody Chapel is a little compartment known as the oubliette. These rooms were originally used, presumably, for storage of treasures. In the case of a siege, they also provided hiding spot. Still, the O'Carrolls exploited this room for a darker purpose. They turned this compartment into a little dungeon where dead or dying inmates were dumped. The chamber's entrance is a small hole originally designed for a sort of trap door. The French "to forget" informs the name. Someone placed into the oubliette was just forgotten about. Said to be a very clever and vicious clan, the O'Carrolls stopped at nothing to rule. Legends abound of various times the O'Carrolls would use other clans as mercenaries to eliminate surrounding dangers. Once their employment was over, the mercenaries were welcomed back to Leap Castle for a festive feast. The feast was poisoned, hence, sadly, for the mercenaries, their necks were slashed. The oubliette then held the dead bodies. There are reportedly 39 O'Neill clan members disposed of this way. Another fatal act at Leap Castle took place in 1599. At battle with the Earl of Tyrone, Charles O'Carroll, the last chieftain at Leap, paid the McMahon clan, from Monaghan, mercenaries. Following their battles for him, the O'Carrolls hosted a banquet for the mercenaries. They were killed then while asleep. Said to haunt the Great Hall of Leap Castle are the McMahon clan. During part of the improvements done, the oubliette was cleaned and the contents were removed during Leap Castle's possession by the Darbys. 3 cartloads of skeletons allegedly were taken from the oubliette at this time. Some say that an emotional shockwave was thrown through the castle, and the numerous souls, including the elemental, were awakened from their hibernation upon this horrific revelation. Sean Ryan talks about a guy seeming to reside in the oubliette. On occasion, he exits the bloody chapel and walks down to the castle's lower floors. Jail, sometimes referred to as HMP Belfast and the Crum, all the way back to the year 1845. The capacity of this jail was designed to house up to 550 inmates, and during the course of its lengthy and terrible existence, about 25,000 individuals were laid to rest inside its walls. Eamon de Valera, Martin McGuinness, Michael Stone, and Bobby Sands were among those who were included in this group. Its first detainees consisted of both males and females, as well as children. With the addition of an execution chamber in 1901, 17 people were executed by hanging over the time span between the establishment's inauguration and its closure in 1961. After the jail was shut down in 1996, the facility was left deserted for many decades until 2010, when work started to renovate it so that it could be used as a museum and other themed attractions. Since then, the walls of the old jail have been used for a variety of events, including weddings and concerts. The fact that the Crumbling Road Jail is haunted should not come as a surprise, given that the walls of the structure have been subjected to years of extreme fury, misery, grief, and death. In point of fact, they commemorate this occasion every Halloween by using opulent and gruesome fright attractions, as well as live investigations into the paranormal. Disembodied voices, footsteps, items moving of their own volition, and doors slamming are some of the many events that have been reported at the old place of incarceration. In the Crumbling Road Jail, the spirit of a little girl was trapped. Thanks to Carly Foster for the photo. On the evening of Halloween in 2016, a paranormal investigation was carried out at the correctional facility. During the course of the research, the crew was able to see one of the doors, which was made of strong steel, shutting on its own accord. Additionally, the digital recording equipment heard some weird sounds. There was a time when the tour guide said that there were 2 children who were thought to be haunting the jail. These children were a boy and a girl. It was discovered that the girl's name was Isabel, and she seemed to be quite eager to make her presence known. One of the guests was caught aback when she got home and looked at the images she had shot during the occasion. She was surprised to find the figure of a little girl standing at the doorway of one of the cells. During the year 2019, the Irish Mirror published an article stating that a visitor had taken a photograph of the silhouette of a guy dressed in uniform standing at the doorway of a cell located in the B wing that was empty. There are rumors that a ghostly prison warden still hangs around here, and this would be consistent with those rumors. There is also a padded cell in the B wing, and some visitors have claimed seeing a shadowy creature while they were inside. Other visitors have described feeling uncomfortable or being touched or pushed when they were inside the cell. It has been reported that a guy may be seen strolling through C Wing, which is the place where the condemned man's cell is located. In comparison to other cells, this one was not only more spacious and cozy, but it also concealed a secret from the souls who spent their time there. Not only did the room include a restroom that was attached to it, but the execution chamber and the hangman's noose were also completely attached to the room. A tunnel that is located under ground level links the old jail to the courthouse that is located on the other side of Crumbling Road. When it was in operation, this hidden passageway would have been used for the purpose of transporting convicts to and from their respective trials. Over the course of many years, there have been several reports of a gray person being seen in the tunnel. These reports have been made by former employees of the jail.